Um, Thank you so much. So very good morning to all of you and a warm welcome to our campus. So it's a true honor to be here with you all today in this conference from climate crisis to climate resilience in Africa at local and regional levels. And so this summit has been brought to life by the amazing collaboration of the Pontifical Academies of Sciences and Social Sciences, C4ACRAF, we have NASAC, and also other amazing African partners. My name is Kipto Chemoyo, and I'm honored today to be facilitating or to be hosting this amazing conference. A round of applause for me. So thank you so much for that. And I'd also like to appreciate, I'd like you to appreciate yourselves for making the time to come here today. So before we get started, I'd like to ask us two questions. So the first one is, we'd like to know the countries that are represented in this room. So I'd like us to shout out your country that you're representing. And then if you join us online, you can shout on the chat. If that can be projected, if you can have the chat so we can see that people the countries that people are coming from. So yeah, let's get started. You can shout your country. Okay, Kenya. Okay, hi cousins. Which other country I had what? Ghana, Zambia, Uganda, Vatican, Ethiopia, California. California is the country. Switzerland, Argentina, Tanzania, Rwanda, Cameroon, Sudan, Germany. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. So the second question that I'd like to ask us is, and so really this number of the countries that you're representing is actually showing a diversity, and which is our strength. And it reminds us that the solutions that we're going to be crafting here from this conference should actually go beyond the borders that you're representing in this place. And the second question that I'd like to ask us is, when you hear the phrase climate resilience, what comes to mind? We can actually also shout again our answers. Life, hope, opportunity, backbenchers, dignity, food security. And so for some, it's adaptation. For others, it's justice. Someone has mentioned hope. But for most people, especially here in Africa, especially maybe for my community as well, it means survival. It means innovation. It means dignity. It means hope. And so really, and this summit is about all of these things that we have shared. It's about moving from resilience, from moving from ideas to action through the MUST framework that we've been given. And it's an honor that you'll be having all these discussions in the course of the next 2 days. And so we're going to get started. And so we're going to be having discussions, we're going to be having panels, we're going to be having interactions, networking, and I hope that you're going to be forging partnerships from all these conversations that you're going to be having. And so to get us started, I'm going to welcome our Chief Operating Officer here at C4ACRAF to guide us in the next round of welcome remarks and the opening addresses. Karibu sana, Philip. A round of applause.
Thank you, Kipto. Good morning. Habari za asubuhi. How many know that? Yeah, so that's just to say good morning. I think it's really a privilege for us today at C4ACRAF as we are hosting, all of you from different parts of the world. I hope that you had a very good and safe flight. Some of you that came a few days before, I understand you've also had chance, of course, to see Nairobi and to see different parts of Kenya. So on behalf of our Chief Executive Officer, Eliane Ubalijoro, my name is Philip Osano. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for C4ACRAF. I just want to welcome all of you to the opening session of our conference this morning. Also to welcome those of us that are joining virtually. In the opening session, we'll be privileged to hear from partners that are, co-convening the conference, and my role is very easy. It's just to introduce them and to ask them also to, on behalf of the organizers, to just give us some words of welcome. So I will start with the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, Marcelo Suarez Ozopco, who is the president. So Marcelo, please, welcome.
The Resilient Africa Summit. It is an honor to have so many colleagues and distinguished leaders with us here in Nairobi today. I want to first thank my colleagues from the Pontifical Academies under the wise leadership of His Eminence, Cardinal Turkson, for organizing the summit and putting together an excellent program. Eminence. Philip, I'm not the president of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. You promoted me, but the pay is very low. Thank you. Thank as well to our hosts here in Nairobi. Elaine Badijoro, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for International Forestry Research and World Agroforestry. Your commitment to this historic summit is deeply, deeply appreciated. I know your entire team showed efforts to get us here today. Of course, my thanks to my colleague, Professor Dr. Joaquin Brune, for their contributions to this opening session and for their leadership and wisdom. Prompt by a call from the late Holy Father, Pope Francis, we gather again to continue the work we commenced at the Vatican Climate Summit, from climate crisis to climate resilience in May 2024, to catalyze a global movement directed at protecting all citizens, above all the most vulnerable, from the climate crisis. Our Holy Father, Leo XIV, has repeatedly called for a shift. I quote the Holy Father, from words to action, on climate change, urging global leaders to move beyond rhetoric and implement real community-based solutions. In California and Massachusetts earlier this year, and in Kenya today, and at 7 future summits in Vienna, Brazil, China, Senegal, Japan, India, Australia, governors, mayors, scientists, indigenous leaders, youth, and civil society actors will convene and chart pathways towards a healed, sustainable, and more humane future. As a reminder, indeed, as an essential framing of why we're here, I wish to offer 5 brief principles that lie at the heart of our Holy Father's call to action. First, the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are one. Droughts, wildfires, hurricanes, floods, heat stress disproportionately impact the poor, the marginalized, the underserved, causing them to suffer the most from a crisis they did not create. Faith and reason demand that we hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor as a single unified plea for justice. That is the beautiful and enduring truth from Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si. In the more recent words, His Holiness Pope Leo XIV, environmental degradation disproportionately harms the poor and marginalized. I continue to quote, we cannot dissociate the treatment of earth from the treatment of the impoverished. They suffer in unison when we, for exploitation over responsibility. End of quote. Second, solidarity is not optional. Climate change knows no borders. From Nairobi to Boston, from Vienna to Buenos Aires, all feel its cruel impacts. We must move beyond division and narrow self-interest and embrace solidarity and share resilience, standing together behind concrete actions and policies that prioritize climate resilience for the public good. Third, strategy is a moral imperative. The MAST framework, M-A-S-T, includes mitigation to reduce emissions and transition to clean energy, along with urgent actions to bend the global centigrade. Must be viewed as a moral endeavor. Mitigation efforts should be scaled up with justice, recognizing Africa's right to sustainable development while shifting to carbon futures. Adaptation involves investing in resilient infrastructure and safeguarding communities with nature-based solutions from climate change impacts. Given Africa's severe climate risks, prioritizing adaptation is essential. Additionally, societal transformation, fostering a culture of sustainability, climate literacy, and stewardship is not just a strategic, science-based necessity. It is also a moral obligation. Fourth, protect, plan, and respond. We must respond to shocks here and now and prepare for longer-term infrastructure resilience. Proactive measures essential, emphasizing resilience and vehicles to protect property and livelihoods and improve the health, including mental health, from climate trauma as well and the well-being of all. Fifth, a call to conversion. The climate crisis demands a conversion of the heart, reflection on our lifestyles, consumption habits, and relationships with one another and with all living systems. Nothing short of natural law calls on us to protect our common home and ensure a just, sustainable future for all. The eyes of the world are on the climate resilient summits. The eyes of the leaders in Kenya and across Africa are on us today. With a profound sense of responsibility to future generations, bring together in environmental citizenship here the Resilient Africa Summit for a very, very urgent endeavor. Thank you so much. I would like to now introduce my colleague, Professor Dr. Joaquin Bombal, President of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences.
Good morning. It's good to be here. You know partly why? My wife tells me we will have 40 degrees Celsius in Bonn today. It's nice and fresh here. But seriously, these heat domes currently over Germany are new, and they are part of climate change, the lack of resilience springing from it. So it's serious. I welcome you on behalf of the Pontifical Academy of Science. The Pontifical Academy of Science has about 80 members from all over the world. The 80 members include about 20 Nobel laureates. It's a very distinguished group. And the Pontifical Academy of Science and of Social Science is open to all religions. So it's important to note the basics of our academies are science, commitment to scientific evidence and truth. And that happens to be under attack in parts of the world. I'm very grateful for the excellent cooperation with C4ICRAF and its Director General, Iliane, and the excellent cooperation with the African Academies of Science, the network NASAC, which is supporting us. So we are science-based with these conferences. We emphasize Africa's disproportionate vulnerability due to climate change. Despite its minimal contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions, Africa is suffering, and the urgency of placing climate resilience on the agenda is clearly there, particularly at local and regional levels. That's why with these summits, we emphasize the local government as key actors. Adaptation has to be local. Mitigation is global. The financing for adaptation is far too low. Globally, only 10% or less. 90% goes to mitigation. Why is that so? Because the world is not fair. Mitigation helps those who have put up the greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere in the first place. That's a rich world. So they care about that, and it shows in the numbers. This conference benefits from strong contributions from African academies of science, research organizations, indigenous knowledge holders, and religious communities. We reaffirm that climate resilience must be based on robust science. Climate adaptation finance, I want to emphasize. We have to talk about money, the quantity and the quality of finance for resilience. We need to identify the priorities for that. We need new instruments and direct access mechanisms for cities and local governments for climate resilience finance. It's not enough if the money is there in in big pots. It has to come down to the local level, because at local level, the understanding of the risks is there. And that's where local government and regional and local science communities have to come together. I want to emphasize, in particular for our summit here, the importance of food, land, and water systems. Because still the majority of African people live in the rural space. Building resilience in Africa's food and water systems is essential. This requires strong African science systems, integrated land use policies, climate-smart forestry and agroforestry, and agriculture and water harvesting, water harvesting technologies and systems. Lastly, I want to emphasize what is also special to this and our series of summits. It's the emphasis on giving youth a voice. I mean, who are we? We don't give youth a voice. Sorry, I correct. They have their voice. We want to amplify, want to facilitate amplification of youth voice. We want to ensure that youth are formally included at all regional and global climate negotiations. We want to bring this message also to COP30 in Brazil. And here and now, we will have a youth-orchestrated set of sessions and an integral approach of youth in all of our sessions. So not the add-on, but the integral approach of youth. I would like to ask that the youth community, which will orchestrate the session later today, and we meet in the first coffee break so that we discuss a few operational issues. Let's get to business. This is not just welcoming. We have to get to business. I would like to call on the youth community in this conference to contemplate bringing forward their own statement, their own outcome statement from this conference. We, the co-organizers, are preparing an outcome statement from our perspective. But youth leaders, do your business and issue your statement. So without any further ado, I would like to thank you all for coming to this important conference, to connect to the upcoming next conferences in Africa and elsewhere in the world. And I believe we now have the pleasure to have introductory remarks from His Eminence Cardinal Turkson. Thank you for coming on your very busy schedule. May I call you to the podium? Thank you very much.
So good morning again. So I'd like to thank you, Chancellor Roscoe, Professor Van Braun, President of Academy, Vatican Academy of the Sciences. If you read anywhere, the first two up there, the green and the blue, they all start Academy of Science, but when they make it Pontifical Academy of Science, then they introduce in a small qualifying distinction. Pontifical refers to the Pope. And the Pontifical Academy of the Science simply means that the Academy of Science are the Pope's academies for science and social science. And the interesting thing is that, so the church is interested in science and social science, and the Pope also so he's got these two institutions to help promote research in science, research in social sciences, and that's why, the part of the promotion of this event. So the one thing that is about it is that for the church, then there's no tension between faith and science. It does not exist for the church. If since, and this I don't want to go down history lane, because this initiative from the part of the church began already in the 16th century, not yesterday. Galileo was a member of this in 1610, when the church's interest in science began manifesting itself. And it is from there that he went to London, Royal Academy of Science. That was the aftershoot of that. Then went to Paris, went to Germany, went to France. So that's what it is. So the beginning point of all of this for us is that we do not see a tension or a challenge between faith and science. Indeed, that the thing of the church is to promote all of this for the integral well-being of the human person. And therefore, when you take the document that Pope Francis wrote, which in 2015 came out and was all over, François Hollande presented it before COP21, then it went to the United Nations and all of that. There's a lot of science in it. Indeed, the second chapter is all about science, the scientific basis for an ecological crisis or ecological concern. And then when the Pope had done the scientific analysis, consulting the UN science community and several other science groups, then he goes on to say, we are interested in all of this, not out of curiosity, but so that we can invite people to turn the pains and the sufferings of creation and the poor into our own personal pains and suffering. So coming here to organize this as a follow-up of an event that took place in the Vatican in May last year, climate resilience, it's part of this research and part of this talk. It is not simply gathering data and information, but from the gathering of data and information to enable us to make the transition, to turn all of this is happening, if it's the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, is to be able to turn all of this sufferings to nature and the poor into our own personal experiences so there can be a change. If the experiences do not become personal, we're never motivated to change. But when the events then can be turned into personal experiences, then there's a motivation to want to change. If you take the encyclical and you're looking at it, it talks about that as conversion. And then it says, but to be able to convert, you need education. Education into what? Education into the fact that we are all ecological citizens. And our ecological citizenship is what promotes us to ecological change and the care of creation. So the word used in that encyclical is care. Before that, there were a lot of documents that used to talk about stewardship of creation. Stewardship and care are different. When you're a steward, you're a steward. You take care of something, it can be with interest or without interest. But when you care, and it's a personal thing of your heart. And it is for the same reason that in the encyclical, the Pope refers to the earth as a garden. It is good that we're here in the forest, but when you talk about a garden is a place of special care and attention. Garden is not a wilderness. It's a place of care and attention. And that's what our world needs to be. Our world needs to be a garden for us, not because we plant flowers, but because it becomes a place of care and attention, dedicated care and attention. And that's what we want to turn the world into. So organizing this event over here is just to stimulate this interest, that we need to move from being stewards of creation to become carers, to even care of creation. And that's the thing. The last thing I want to talk about is, 3 weeks ago, I represented the Vatican in Nice, in France, about a conference on the oceans. And it's been the practice of the Vatican to talk about these natural events in terms of a heritage. When you say everything that we have received, forests, seas, and all of that are heritage, they invite us to do essentially two things. If something is a heritage, then it means you are not the source of it. You received it. It came to you. And if it came to you and you're not responsible for it, then it evokes within you a sense of gratitude and care because you are receiving it. And what you receive, you would give thanks for. And that also means that you are going to pass it on to those who will come after you. And that is the youth that Professor Joachim talked about. So the big concern of the church is also in intergenerational solidarity. We need to consider ourselves as people in solidarity with the generations that are coming after us. So intergenerational solidarity is a big signpost and a guideline in the church's consideration of all of these environmental issues. We received it, we'll pass it on. We receive it in its beauty, we cannot pass it on as a desert. It will be unfair for us to receive creation in all its wealth of wonder and then pass it on to the future generations as a wilderness. We would have failed in our duty to preserve everything and pass it on to those coming after us. So that is a challenge. What we have received in beauty, let's not pass it on as a wilderness. What we receive in all its richness and wonder, it will be pain if we pass it on as a desert to those who come after us. So the point of this meeting and the insistence of the president to have a lot of youth representation and presence here was for this, to make this point. It invites us. There are a few old people in this room. So to working within us a sense of gratitude for what we have received, but also to be filled with a sense of responsibility to pass this on as a heritage to those who come after us. So with this, I want to thank all the partners for this event that you've accepted to collaborate with us for this. We came over here because Nairobi is closer to the Horn of Africa. And when you mention the Horn of Africa, everybody knows the challenges. The drought, the locusts, the pain, everything that happens there. Nairobi is close to us, so that's it. From here, it will be to Dakar. And when it comes to Dakar, then you're talking about the Sahel. So we have two challenging zones where we're taking this to just enable us to think about the challenges that we face a little bit more closely. So thank you again for your collaboration. Thank you all for coming, and we wish this conference great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence, for really that powerful edict on where faith and science meet. At this stage, I was holding brief for the CEO of C4ICRAF, Elian Balijoro, who has now joined us. So I'll graciously hand over to Elian to take us forward to the next steps. Elian.
Thank you very much, Philip. Some of you know that I came back from a very hot Rome yesterday, and that it's a real pleasure for me to be here for many, many reasons. One of the first, I just want you to know, as a child, I remember my excitement when my parents went to meet John Paul II. And later in high school, in an all-girls high school, I had the opportunity to attend an outdoor mass where he spoke. And so to be here today with all of you, here on this campus, a campus that was cherished by Wangari Maathai, is deeply, deeply touching for me. So thank you all. Good morning, karibuni. Murakaza Mizahano at C4ICRAF. It is my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you to C4ICRAF's campus here in Nairobi for the African-Vatican Climate Resilience Summit. And welcome as well to everyone joining online today from wherever you are in the world. Thinking about John Paul II, he emphasized the moral and spiritual crisis that underlied the social and environmental issues in the world. And one of the things he asked was to engage in ecological conversations. And what I see us having for the next 2 days is really engaging in ecological conversations. We are deeply honored to co-host this gathering with the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, in partnership with NASAC, UMass, Boston, and many of Africa's visionary leaders and institutions. This is more than a summit. It is a collective call to action. It is a call that recognizes the urgent need to move beyond mitigation alone and to embrace a broader, more inclusive framework of mitigation, adaptation, and social transformation. To shape a resilient, just, and thriving future for Africa and the world. What makes this moment so powerful is the rich diversity of voices gathered here. Like you mentioned, youth and elders, scientists and spiritual leaders, policymakers and community champions from every corner of this remarkable continent and far beyond. This diversity is not incidental. It is, in fact, the foundation of resilience. True resilience emerges when we integrate diverse ways of knowing, scientific, spiritual, and traditional, and commit to the collective action grounded in solidarity. There's a wonderful book that some of you may have read called In Braiding Sweetgrass. How do we braid those different knowledge systems together while respecting their integrity? And at Seafor Ikraf, our work is grounded in nature-based solutions that serve people and planet. And in the belief that restoring forests, landscapes, and livelihoods is central to societal transformation. Our scientists have been cultivating knowledge on sustainable land management for decades through their evidence-based research embedded in development. We have 70 years of combined experience supporting stakeholders and policymakers with insights grounded in science while informing practices that affect landscapes and people. We know that resilience is not abstract. It is what allows a farmer to recover from drought. It is what ensures a young person can find purposeful and dignity in shaping their community's future. It is what makes a city stronger after a disaster and wiser before the next. Resilience is climate action. Resilience is peace building. And I have to emphasize that sustainable land management and large-scale land restoration is essential in mitigating and adapting to the impact of a warming planet and building resilience in communities. Nowhere else in the world is this interrelationship more evident for climate change and more alarming than in Africa. The continent is the most affected and the least responsible for climate change. Yet, Africa is leading the way in harnessing the power of trees, forests, and agroforestry in landscapes to address climate change, along with other pressing challenges of our time, such as biodiversity loss, food insecurity, and inequity. And I'm so deeply honored to have all of you here today on our campus. Let us use this opportunity to listen deeply, collaborate boldly, and leave no voice behind, especially the voice of the youngest among us, who will carry the legacy of what we begin here today. I want to end on one last note to the young people here today. While you're here, I encourage you to take a moment to visit the beautiful Karura Forest, a vibrant example of locally led restoration. My personal hero, Wangari Maathai, worked here to establish the sanctuary that many of us here in Nairobi enjoy every day. As Wangari once said, it is the little things citizens do that make the difference. My little thing is planting trees. Wangari started with small things, with small groups of women preparing seedlings to go out and plant trees. And if we look at her legacy, millions, if not billions, of trees have been planted because of her drive and dedication. Her passion was infectious. I had the honor of meeting her, and I'm honored that we're all here together. And Karura today is championed by Nairobi citizens. Their dedication and entrepreneurial spirit serve as a model for what can be achieved when communities take action together for a more resilient earth. And it shows how our small acts, even if we only plant one tree, can later provide shade, food, and shelter to the next generation. Thank you for being here. We are honored to walk this journey with you. Karibuni sana, and welcome to C4 ICRAF.
Powerful words. So welcome, a round of applause for them again. Thank you so much for that, and I think it's so powerful. You know, seeing forests as gardens. I never pictured that. So anytime that Eliane has encouraged us to visit Karura Forest, that we see it as a garden, and I think it's very powerful. And thank you so much for offering to give the youth a platform to also lead and not just to be present. And I have the honor of being a young person here hosting this session today. And so we're going to the next session. We're going to be having open addresses, and I have the privilege of inviting the first opening address, and I'm going to invite the Executive Director of NASAC, Jacqueline Cado, to come on stage to give her remarks. A round of applause. Karibu sana, Jacqueline.
I was actually expecting the first speaker, so that's why I was caught a bit unawares. Good morning. Good morning. It's a question, right? Good. Thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be here. Allow me to just acknowledge the founding president of NASAC, Professor Mohamed Hassan. So I'm here today on account that my president, who comes from Benin, was engaged. My name is Dr. Jackie Cado. I am the executive director of the Network of African Science Academies. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, distinguished governors and mayors, fellow scientists, esteemed members of the Pontifical Academies, C4 ICRAF, colleagues from here, colleagues, the youth and youth leaders, good morning once again. I like it when you respond. It's a question. So good morning once again. Good, so you had breakfast. It is a deep honor to represent the president of the Network of African Science Academies today. We call NASAC in short, at this historic summit on climate resilience in Africa at local and regional levels. Allow me to commend the Pontifical Academies of Sciences, Social Sciences, C4 ICRAF, Peter, not Peter, Philip, who I've known for a long while now, as well as other and every convening partners that is here for this timely and visionary initiative. This gathering comes not as another climate conversation, and you've heard from the speakers before me, but it is a bold step towards collective transformation, one that is rooted in science, policy, and moral imperative to protect both people and planet. NASAC brings together 32 science academies, both at national level, and one regional academy, the African Academy of Sciences. These academies come from Africa, and the main reasons why academies exist is to enable science be injected into policy making. It is therefore truly an honor to be able to find a space where faith actually meets science, where church cannot be seen as an outsider in the discussion of politics. Our mission is to advance science, science-informed policy for Africa's development. And there is no greater or more urgent policy challenge than the climate crisis. We resonate deeply with the summit's call to move from climate crisis to resilience. Through mitigation, adaptation, and societal transformation, what I think Professor Joachim called MUST, the triad mirrors the core tenets of NASAC's own work. We believe that scientific rigor in climate research promotes mitigation. We also believe that community-grounded innovation promotes adaptation. But last and not least, we also believe that inclusive engagement with decision makers and society is what leads to transformation. Why is this summit important, and why does it matter for Africa? Africa contributes, and you've heard that, to the least of the global emissions that is recorded so far. Yet it bears the brunt of climate volatility. We talk about floods, droughts, desertification, and the extreme weather events that are no longer distant threats. They're actually unfolding now, here, and as we speak, disrupting the lives and livelihoods of farmers, local communities, and populations across both rural and urban settings. The summit emphasizes on local and regional action, engaging governors, mayors, community leaders, and young voices. It is truly a pleasure to be able to see young people at the table to be able to discuss. Please do not take it lightly, the invitation to also have your say in this space. It is precisely the kind of collective response that Africa needs. Solutions by us, with us, and for us. NASAC believes that equipping and supporting local leadership across all levels of society is not only strategic, but it is vital for sustainable, people-centered resilience. The role of science, then, as NASAC sees it, in this summit is a pivotal opportunity to embed science at the heart of Africa's climate resilience strategy. To this end, we will support, as NASAC, the development of city and region-specific resilient protocols. We also offer our continental platform to amplify youth-led and science-backed innovation. We pledge to help the outcomes of this summit to be translated into structural contributions for COP30 and the final Vatican Summit of 2026 and beyond. We therefore call on each and every one of us to act. I like that the speaker before me spoke about the important work that Professor Wangari Maathai has brought to the fore. Allow me to conclude with a few statements that he made, or just one for this specific reason. During the Nobel of 2004 Peace Prize address, Professor Wangari Maathai said that when we plant trees, we plant the seeds of peace and the seeds of hope. This simple yet profound truth captures the heart of our mission today. Environmental restoration is not a side issue. It is as central to peace, it is as essential to human well-being and the foundational lasting solution to prosperity. NASAC believes that science must not only speak, but definitely walk the talk. It must lead with integrity, be grounded in ethics, but be backed by tradition and guided by the wisdom of local communities. Let us ensure that out of this summit emerges not just declarations or just talk, but bold, actionable blueprints for cleaner cities, cleaner rural environments, but also smarter agriculture. And this is where we hope that we will engage the youth more, because we are looking at food sustainability and security. But to also strengthen coastlines, and I think something we will see in Senegal as well. Restored ecosystems and healthier societies across the continent. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, allow me on behalf of my president at the Network of African Science Academies and the entire network of 32 science academies, and also looking to include national young academies from this year, from the continent, to reaffirm our commitment to this journey of transformation. Together, let us unite to forge a path of climate resilience, grounded in knowledge, justice, and hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And, you ask an average youth at the moment, like, who's that one leader who's passionate about the environment currently in our country? I'm sure they'll all say and name that we have that person in this room today. And so, ladies, gentlemen, friends, it's my privilege to invite to stage now His Excellency Wilbur Otichilo, the Governor for Vihiga County, and also the Chair Environment, Forestry, and Climate Change. Yes. Karibu sana, Governor. Yeah. Karibu sana.
Good morning, everybody. First, I want to bring you greetings from the 47 governors who I represent in this summit. Second, I want to also bring you greetings from the Minister for Environment, Forestry, and Climate Change. Third, I want to give you my own greetings and my own welcome to Kenya, particularly our sisters and brothers from various countries in Africa and our brothers and sisters from the rest of the world. And more importantly, the team from the Vatican City. I think we have done a commendable job and we are very happy. And as a country, we really feel privileged to host this very important summit in our country and on our continent. I'll request you allow me to take you through the achievements and challenges that we have had on this continent as regards to climate change and particularly climate resilience. Despite of all the challenges, Africa is moving forward. And that is the message I want to give you. We are moving forward and we are not looking backward. So let's move, and I believe in this summit, by the time we end, we'll have a new way of moving forward to ensure that this continent moves forward like any other. Allow me to go through my speech, which will cover issues that I've raised. It is an honor to stand before you today at the African Resilience Summit held at the esteemed World Agroforestry Center here in Nairobi. I would like to take a moment to reflect the journey that has brought us to this pivotal moment. The seeds of this summit were sown in the Vatican, where we first gathered to discuss the pressing issue of climate resilience, led by the late Pope Francis. May his soul rest in eternal peace. The Vatican Conference resulted in several resolutions, including commitment to accelerate climate action, promote sustainable development, and support vulnerable communities. These resolutions have been instrumental in shaping our understanding of the complex relationships between climate change, sustainable development, and human well-being. It is from the Vatican Conference that a resolution was made to hold 10 regional summits across the globe to discuss how to address climate resilience, which will culminate in the final summit at the Vatican with a report on the way forward. The first summit was held in California, US, followed by Boston, Massachusetts, engaging the global leaders and experts. The California Summit brought together innovators, policymakers, and entrepreneurs to discuss cutting-edge solution to climate resilience. The Boston Summit built on this momentum, focusing on the role of science, technology, and innovation in addressing climate change. These summits have yielded significant achievements, including the development of a new climate finance mechanisms, the launch of innovative climate resilient technologies, and the strengthening of global partnerships. Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather on African soil in Kenya to bring the conversation home. The African Resilience Summit aims to address the unique challenges and opportunities facing our continent. We will focus on locally led climate resilience, innovative climate finance, and science-driven solutions. We will explore ways to scale up climate action, promote sustainable development, and support vulnerable communities. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and Africa is on the front line. Rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and increased frequency of extreme weather events are having a devastating impact on our communities, our economies, and our ecosystems. From droughts and floods to heat waves and sea level rise, the impacts of climate change are far-reaching and are multifaceted. In Africa, climate change is not just an environmental issue. It is a developmental imperative. It is affecting our agriculture, our water resources, our health, and our economies. It is exacerbating poverty, inequality, and social injustice. But we are not just victims of climate change. We are also the solution. We have the creativity and the resilience to build a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is considered one of the most vulnerable continents to climate change due to its reliance on rain-fed agriculture, high level of poverty, and limited adaptive capacity, according to IPCC report of 2021. It is warming faster than the global average, with the temperatures increases detected across the continent. Climate change has increased heat waves and droughts in Africa, with the droughts becoming more frequent in all areas, particularly West Africa and the Greater Horn of Africa. Its impacts is projected to result in losses and damage across Africa, including economic losses, particularly loss of assets and crops, and non-economic losses, particularly loss of biodiversity, heritage, and health. According to the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, climate change is expected to increase food insecurity, with the projections indicating that by 2050, 50% of the continent's population could face food shortages due to climate impacts. The African Development Bank estimates that climate change could cost Africa between 5 to 10 billion US dollars annually by 2025, potentially rising to 50 billion US dollars by 2050, if no actions are taken to mitigate impacts. The Global Center on Adaptation has highlighted that investing in climate resilient infrastructure could yield significant results, with every $1 invested in resilience yielding $4 in benefits. The African Union has taken leadership role in addressing climate change. The Africa Climate Change Summit held in Nairobi in September 2023 resulted in several resolutions, including the commitment to increase renewable energy capacity, promote climate resilient agriculture, and support climate change adaptation and gentlemen, Africa has taken significant steps to build resilience against climate change, focusing on adaptation, mitigation, sustainable development. Some of the key initiatives include: 1, Team Europe Initiative on Climate Change Adaptation and Resilience, launched at the COP27. This initiative brings together European countries and institutions to strengthen Africa's resilience to climate change, with a focus on data, governance, early warning systems, climate finance, and risk insurance. Then other initiatives, the national and local adaptation plans. Most African countries are developing and implementing plans to adapt to climate change, focusing on climate resilience agriculture, water management, and disaster risk reduction. Climate smart agriculture. Initiatives promoting climate smart agricultural practices such as drought-resistant crops and efficient irrigation schemes are being implemented in a majority of our countries. Land restoration and ecosystem conservation. Efforts to restore degraded lands, promote sustainable land use, and conserve ecosystems are underway in a number of countries, with support from organizations like Global Environmental Facility and UNDP. Climate information and early warning systems. Initiatives like the Africa Risk View platform provide critical climate information and early warning systems to help countries prepare for and respond to climate-related disasters. Climate finance and insurance. Mechanisms like the Extreme Climate Facility and the Africa Risk Capacity Group provides climate finance and insurance solutions or to support countries in managing climate-related risks. Community-based initiatives. Community-led initiatives such as those supported by African people and wildlife initiatives focus on building resilience and promoting sustainable livelihoods in vulnerable communities. Regional and international cooperation. The African Union Agenda 2063 provides a framework for sustainable development, while international partnerships like TEI and collaboration with organizations like UNDP and Global Environmental Facility support climate resilience efforts across the continent. Many African countries are developing and implementing plans to adapt to climate change, focusing on climate resilient agriculture, water management, and disaster risk reduction. These initiatives demonstrate Africa's commitment to building resilience against climate change and promoting sustainable development. Back to Kenya, ladies and gentlemen. Kenya is particularly vulnerable due to the diverse climate zones and reliance on agriculture, which employs about 70% of the population. The World Bank report that climate change could reduce agricultural yields by up to 50% by 2050. Kenya is experiencing frequent climate shocks, posing significant economic risks with estimated potential risk GDP losses of up to 7% by 2050. Climate-related disasters in Kenya are attributable to extreme climate events, with 70% of disasters from natural hazards caused by climate-related events. The cost of climate action in Kenya were estimated to be $62 billion by 2030. Climate change affects Kenya's largely rain-fed agriculture and pastoral systems, with a potential yield decreases of 9% at 1.5 degrees global warming, and at 41% at 4 degrees without adaptation measures. However, all is not gloom in Kenya. We have made significant strides in integrating climate resilience into our development plans. Our county, sub-county governments working in tandem with the national authorities are critical to this effort. They are driving initiatives that promote sustainable land use, climate-smart agriculture, and disaster risk reduction. For example, in counties like Turkana and Marsabit, we are working on innovative projects to promote climate resilience agriculture and improve water management. The government of Kenya has taken several steps to build resilience against climate change. Some of the initiatives include the formulation of the National Climate Change Action Plan. This was developed through extensive analysis and stakeholder consultation. This plan outlines Kenya's strategy for low carbon, climate resilient development. It also addresses adaptation, mitigation, finance, policy, and legislation. We have renewable energy targets. Kenya aims to achieve 100% renewable energy in its mix by 2030, with a focus on geothermal, wind, and solar power. The Lake Turkana Wind Power Project, one of Africa's largest wind farms, contributes significantly to this goal. According to the Ministry of Energy, Kenya has made strides in climate adaptation with investments in renewable energy like the geothermal and wind, which are all projected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% in 2030. Climate smart agriculture. The government promotes climate resilient agriculture practices through initiatives like climate smart agriculture strategy and implementation framework. These include promoting drought-tolerant crops, efficient irrigation schemes, and climate information services. Tree planting and reforestation. Kenya plans to plant and nurture 15 billion trees by 2032 to conserve and restore 10.6 million hectares of degraded landscapes and ecosystems. Financing locally led climate action. This is a very innovative program that has been implemented in this country. And this program is a program to deliver locally led climate resilience actions and restore and strengthen national and county governments' capacity to manage climate risks. International cooperations, Kenya partners with the organizations like United Nations Development Program, UNDP, the World Bank, and the Green Climate Fund to access technical expertise, resources, and funding to climate initiatives. The country has also developed National Adaptation Plan. The plan aims to enhance the resilience to climate change impacts, focusing on sectors like agriculture, water, and energy. We have also climate change reporting. Kenya has established a robust system to monitoring and reporting climate change initiatives, ensuring transparency and accountability in its climate actions. Ladies and gentlemen, at the local level, that is at the county level, where all of us, the governors, are, where the action is. This is what we are doing in this country, and we hope the rest of the countries in Africa can do the same. At the local or community level, county or national governments in Kenya have taken a significant step to be resilient against climate change. Here are some of the key initiatives. We have establishing county climate change funds. Several counties, including my county, Vihiga, Makueni, Wajir, Garissa, Isiolo, Kitui, have set up county climate change funds to identify and prioritize and finance investment that reduce climate risk and achieve adaptation priorities. These funds have enabled counties to strengthen and reinforce national climate change policies while delivering on adaptation priorities. I know the issue of climate financing is going to be discussed at length in this summit. And I want to stress that for us, we have said while we would like support from the rest of the partners, but as a people, we must take the first action. So for counties, once we have established climate change funds in our budgeting circle to ensure that we have money to deal with mitigation and adaptation at a community level. And those funds are availed to the communities through their own community initiatives. We are also mainstreaming climate change adaptation. And also, as many counties have made progress in integrating climate change adaptation into the county integrated development plans. This involves incorporating climate information and prioritizing adaptation measures to be resilient. So in all our development plans, climate change has been mainstreamed in all the sectors to ensure that every sector addresses the issue of climate change. We have also community-based adaptation initiatives with the programs focusing on sustainable land management and agroforestry. A report of the United Nations Economic Program, UNDP, noted that these initiatives have improved resilience among rural areas. We have also focused on developing climate change policies and laws. We have the national policies, and we also now have county policies and legislation, including strategic plans. Investing in climate resilience projects, the county climate resilient investment grant has allocated, in our case, 7.3 billion to 45 counties, with the funds directed towards projects in water, agriculture, and environmental conservation, capacity building, and stakeholder engagement. Counties have engaged in capacity building initiatives and stakeholder engagement and community mobilization to enhance climate change governance and resilience. Collaboration with the national government and development partners. County governments have worked with national government, development partners, and organizations to access to technical expertise, resources, and climate change initiatives. So those are some of the efforts we are doing at the local level to ensure that climate change is mainstreamed at the lowest level possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that Africa faces unique and formidable challenges in building resilience to climate change. And some of the challenges, I think I have noted about it, is the issue of extreme weather patterns, agricultural dependency and food security risks, limited resources to climate adaptation, impacts of climate change on health, infrastructure vulnerability to climate change, and the data constraints and research gaps. I think this is a very important issue that I would like to be discussed in this summit, that we have climate-related research in Africa faces severe data constraints, inequalities in funding and research leadership are reducing adaptive capacity and economic growth. We also want to look at low adaptation finance disbursement. Adaptation finance disbursement ratios for climate-related finance in Africa is very low, with only 40%, 46% commitments targeting adaptation have been dispersed. So, ladies and gentlemen, this summit is a crucial step towards mobilizing action. We want to mobilize action, sharing knowledge, and forging partnerships that will help us build a more resilient Africa. In this 2-day summit, we will be discussing innovative climate finance options, showcasing successful resilience practices, and exploring scientific breakthroughs that can be scaled up. We will be examining the role of county governments, like in this case Kenya and other African countries, in driving climate action and promoting sustainable development. I would like to emphasize that this climate resilience is not just about responding to disasters. It is about creating a better future for our people. It is about ensuring that our children can grow up in a world where they can thrive, not just survive. It is about building economies that are resilient, sustainable, and equitable. Let us work together to harness our collective potential, to share our knowledge, and to support one another in this critical endeavor. Let us make this summit a turning point in our journey towards a more resilient Africa. In conclusion, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers, the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences for convening this important climate summit in Nairobi, Kenya. I would also like to thank the World Agroforestry Center for hosting us and providing a platform for us to share our experiences and expertise. Finally, let us seize this opportunity to deliberate on how to strengthen climate resilience globally and especially in Africa. Thank you, and I wish you all a successful summit. Thank you.
Amazing. Such an honor getting to hear from our leaders giving us such remarks. Thank you so much. And now we are officially opened for the conference, for the two-day conference. And I hope you are feeling excited to check on your neighbor who is still here with us and say hi. Say hi to them, like the one on your right. If the one on the right seems to have an attitude, turn to them. Check on them if they are feeling okay. Amazing. Thank you so much. And so we're going to be having our first panel now. We're going to be having the first session. And I'm going to be inviting the panelists on the stage. And the first person I'm going to be welcoming is His Excellency Wilbur Otichilo, who just gave his remarks. The governor for Vihiga County and also the chair Environment, Forestry and Climate Change and Committee. So we can have you sit, Your Excellency. And another panelist on this session is going to be Honorable Annie Kapandula Kalamatila, the mayor for Lufwanyama. We can be giving them a round of applause when they come to the stage. We're so happy to be having you. And then I'm going also to invite Honorable Samuel Asefa, the Director, California Office on Land Use and Climate Innovation. A round of applause. Next up is Honorable Lilian Seymour Bar, the Mayor of Delhi City, and Strabane District Council. We're so happy to have you. And then finally, our Chief Operating Officer, C4 Aircraft, Dr. Philip Osano. And then lastly, I'm going to invite the moderator for this section, Dr. Elian Yubalijoro, the Chief Executive Officer for C4 Aircraft. Karibu sana.
I'm going to start here. So just how excited are you by what we've had so far? I'd like you to show me some excitement. So this is a really exciting moment for us, and it really comes at a really interesting moment. As I said earlier, I just came back from Rome, where there was the African Union, European Union high-level ministerial conference on sustainable agriculture. And so for us to really delve into African climate resilience following this high-level ministerial event is a really powerful way to move forward, particularly this session where we're going to be looking at the challenges and best practices for resilience from the perspectives of mayors and local leaders. So our distinguished panel has been introduced by Kipto, and I really want to say that what really matters now is not really for me to give you any introduction to this event, but really to plunge into the wisdom that is shared around here. And so, Governor Otichelo, it's been such a pleasure to really hear your remarks. And one of the things I would like to get more information from you is, we know that climate change is a global crisis with Africa bearing the brunt of its impact. what actions are specifically being taken by the African regions, and specifically your country in collaboration with your subnational county, that builds on the remarks you've already shared with us?
Thank you for that question. And I'm happy that I have actually covered part of that question during my address. So I will only just give a summary of what I think is going on the continent. As I noted in my opening remarks, Africa is moving forward in taking climate change very serious. And one of the areas that have been taken serious is the issue of putting laws and policies. And this was done, as I said in my speech, the first Pan-African parliamentarians met in South Africa and resolved that we must have policies and laws to direct on how we deal with climate change. So that's one starting point. The other very important point is the African Union. Under the African Union, the Agenda 2063, climate change has been mainstreamed as a major challenge on the development agenda for Africa. So climate change has been mainstreamed in that document to ensure that all African countries take climate change as an issue that is of development in nature. The other areas of interest is in terms of countries taking the initiatives themselves to deal with climate change. And as I indicated in my address, countries like Kenya have taken the issue where at the subnational level, climate change has been mainstreamed so that it can get to the local level, because it is at the local level where the impact of climate change is felt most. So those are some of the areas. And the other areas where we have done well as an African continent is networking, getting with partnerships, with various partnerships, particularly the UNDP and the World Bank, particularly the African Environmental Facility Program. So I think I would stop there, but we will elaborate as we go.
Thank you very much, Governor. So Mayor Annie Kapandula Kalamatila, what practical community-driven approaches can local leaders adopt to build resilience against climate and socioeconomic shocks in rural districts like Rufnyama, and how can leaders ensure inclusive participations in such initiatives?
Love to bring greetings from Lufanyama. It's a very beautiful district, though in the rural area, but we've got trees and we have to safeguard them from cutting, because in my district, there is a lot of cutting trees. And me coming to this summit, I would love to be a champion for climate change, to work with the women and with the youths to plant more trees. There is a lot of deforestation because of farming and mining and activities due to poverty, charcoal burning. So I have to ensure that we take steps to deter that. When it comes to deforestation, the only way we will stop that is to plant more trees. Afforestation. We work with the youths and the women to plant more trees, because 10 years from now, I don't see the same Rufanyama forests, but because of the cutting of trees, we were also hit with climate change. We were hit badly the past 3 years. We didn't have rainfall. In my district, we do have nice rains because we've got good forest, but this time around we were hit. So we have to take measures to stop that. We have to ensure that we plant more trees. We do management. We come up with a community, encourage our communities to have smart type of farming. Yeah, so that we are not, the climate change is there to stay. So we need to take precautions to stop that, because like I alluded to, climate change hit us badly. We had we didn't have enough food because of the rains. We didn't have enough rains. So we are doing all we can as a district to do afforestation to help us. Thank you.
Samuel Asefa, thank you for being here with us. And so you really bring an interesting perspective, working at the subnational level for California and really have an understanding of Kenyan counties. And so we know that there's so much you could be sharing with us. We have experience related to ambitious targets like carbon neutrality by 2045 and 100% clean car sales by 2035 in California. You've highlighted the disproportionate impact of climate extremes in vulnerable communities, both in California and Kenya, in your work. How would you describe California's role as a reliable partner rather than a prescriptive one? And what specific mechanisms like regional summits or resilience bonds could strengthen learning between California and Kenya moving forward, given the context we've seen and the fires recently that have elevated how people are seeing climate on both sides of the world?
Great. First of all, I want to say thank you for the organizers for this important gathering. And second, I want to say I'm honored to be here representing California and California Governor Newsom for engagement with Kenya. And on a personal note, I'm so proud to be here as an African-American born and raised in Africa, Ethiopia particularly, and welcomed in Kenya when I was 16 as a refugee coming from Ethiopia because of political turmoil there. And for that, for the Kenyans, I want to say, Asante sana, Mimi Niwana, Kenya. So my own story reflects in terms of how critical it is to be collectively addressing this issue, as was said before. And I'll talk about California's example and where California is. But it's also important that the topic that we're discussing today, there's no question how the world is, shows how the world is interconnected. So in California, I think a lot of the work started, you hear about the political turmoil now, the chasms between Republicans, Democrats. What's really remarkable from the California story is actually climate change issues. The most stringent climate policy was instituted by Ronald Reagan as the governor of California in 1970 and created my office to administer that. So a Republican created that infrastructure, actually the most stringent climate policy in the country. So it has that history that whether you're Democrat or Republican, the issue is critical for all of us because it is interconnected. So when California sets targets, it has actually every single time has achieved it. And what has worked for us, and when I hear Governor Otichelo spell out how the county is doing here, they're very parallel. So setting up reliable and achievable targets, following with a clear and achievable plan, but also accountability. And one of the critical and important components of California's focus has been close to 75% of our policies and investments are targeted to about 75% of the most disadvantaged and vulnerable communities throughout the state. So that's kind of one lesson in parallel to what the governor was talking about that we are doing. And so exchanging ideas, and not only just in the summit, but actually building partnerships with local communities as well as countries is a critical part of exchange. As we speak now, my office is working on signing a memorandum of understanding to partner with Kenya and Nigeria on climate issues and exchanging ideas and resources. We have implemented a number of policies and laws that are not directly applicable, but the blueprint is a resource for others. The climate work and financing mechanism, Governor, you outlined here, that resonates for us as well. And I want to learn from that even more because it is really targeted to actually paying for, helping pay for the adaptation and the resources. So those are important. I think the exchange at a subnational level is more critical now than it is ever because of, again, the political turmoils that seem to be stepping us backwards. We within the California at least are saying we need to double down on that and engage internationally so that we address an issue that is really impacting us globally.
Thank you, Samuel. Your story is so important on so many levels. It's important in terms of immigration and the flow of knowledge between Africa and the US. It's important in terms of the legacy of Ronald Reagan and the representation of bipartisan work in California. And it's also critical in terms of the relationships at the subnational level between Africa and the US. And so this is such an important moment, and I look forward to more MOUs being signed with other African countries. And really, as a Rwandan citizen, I will see what I can do to advocate as well. I really see this as very exciting. And as somebody who was a refugee myself in 1994 and who's back here, who was in Canada at the time, I also feel how we take care. And this morning, we really had that idea of care. We have to lead with care and how important it is, because some of us will be vulnerable at some points in our lives, and other points we will have power. And this is something that flows. It's nothing that's constant. So let's care for each other. So thank you for being here, Samuel. So Dr. Leanne Sinoy Bar, I wanted to ask you, how is Derry City and Strabane balancing environmental protection with community well-being, particularly in terms of biodiversity and improving access to nature? And how is this balancing really contributing to environmental protection with community well-being? And given Northern Ireland's first climate action plan has just entered public consultation, can you outline the key targets and actions set out for the period of 2023-27?
Good morning, everyone, and may I echo Samuel's wonderful words. It is an absolute pleasure for me to be here today. I was born in Kenya, Narok, and I am now a Derry girl in Northern Ireland. Yes, and it is a privilege for me to come back home to be discussing such an amazing and a vital topic about climate resilience. Now, in Derry, just to give you a little bit of a background of my city, it is a city that has 150,000 people, and it is part of a 1.8 million people in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is a community that is known for its resilience because of its troubled past, but it is also a community that understands why we have to be involved in issues of climate change. Now, for those who have never been in Ireland, you will know it is a place that it is green, it rains all the time, it is very cold, and that's why we recognize when climate change is happening. The last few years, it's becoming warm. March is mostly a very cold time, but this year we recorded 25 degrees in March. That is shocking to us. When it comes to rain, we normally do not have flooding. It is increasingly becoming a daily occurrence in our city and district and across the region. So we are very aware of climate change because we are experiencing it. Now, my question is about what our council is doing. And I am very proud that within Northern Ireland, actually, we just published our climate action. And I will tell you a little bit about that. But to just talk about our own council, I'm very proud because it aligns, our policies align with the Northern Ireland legal target of reaching net zero by 2050. And we know that this is extremely challenging. It is a challenging goal, but it's essential for our future and our region. And we know of our planet too. And for me, it is also personal because as I mentioned, not only being a Maasai woman, I also understand, as it has been alluded today here, that Africa contributes less, but we feel it more than anybody else. So that is why it is very personal for me to see and to push within our own council and within our own region to reach that net zero in 2050. We've already made a lot of progress in our city. Since the year 2000, we've achieved a 20% reduction in emissions across Derry City and Strabane. And that has been delivered through a combination of things. Cleaner energy generation, including decarbonizing of our electricity grid. We've spent a lot of money intentionally to do that, improving the energy efficiency of building and transport, and transitioning away from older carbon-intensive industries towards a more sustainable, higher value economy. And I said this is intentional within our city and district. As a council, we invest in we know that when it comes to rates, for those who pay rates and know about paying rates, citizens sometimes complain a lot. But our citizens no longer complain about paying more rates because they see the work that we're doing in the city to safeguard their own futures. We are also supporting the decarbonization of homes, transport, and infrastructure. And Northern Ireland is one of the leading regions when it comes to electric cars and buses. We introduced only 2 years ago electric buses across Belfast, which is our first city, and Derry, our second city in Northern Ireland. We're very proud of that. So in terms of balancing the well-being of our citizens and climate change, we're very aware that our citizens are at the heart of changing. So little things like waste, little things within the community, encouraging people to ensure that they grow their own food. And you just imagine in a European country, it might look hard to grow your own food, but earlier today, somebody mentioned about the gardens. Our gardens back in Ireland now, it's for growing food. People within their own back gardens, they are encouraged to grow food themselves. We don't have a big problem when it comes to trees, but every single year, we have an annual Growing Trees Day. And we have a lot of trees within our own country anyway. So there's a lot that I can share, but I don't want to take too much time because there's so many other questions that we're going to, but I am delighted to be part of this conference, but also to contribute in the discussion on what our city is doing.
Thank you very much, Lillian. Philip, so recently having joined C4ICRAF and listening to the remarks of our amazing colleagues here, what would you say roles does research-guided development play in resilience building from C4ICRAF and from all the experiences you've had so far?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Lillian. Yeah, I think it's really a privilege to be here. And I think, as you say, listening to these experiences, I wanted to just highlight the role of research and science. The first thing to say is that when it comes to climate science, there has not been a much appreciation of the role of cities in climate action. And from the science side, some of you that know the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for the first time has commissioned a special report on climate change and cities. So there has never been a special dedicated report on climate change and cities. And this report is actually now going to highlight the scientific and technological role that cities can play in terms of building resilience. And I must say that for C4ICRAF, this is also something that we really see the opportunities when it comes to, for example, greening of cities. I've had a lot of experiences here about, tree planting, about Samuel, you come from Addis or you come from Ethiopia. If you look at what has happened in Addis Ababa in the last 15 years, the place has really changed. The place has really been greening. And I see that across many African cities. I just came back on Saturday from Kigali, Rwanda. You look, they have a big Nyandungo wetlands, one of the really restored wetlands, urban wetlands, and they have a big plan to actually restore 5 more wetlands, in the city. And I see that in Dar es Salaam, I see that in Nairobi, and so on. So I think when Governor Tichilo talks about Africa moving forward, it's actually in practice and in reality. And I think the most fundamental thing there is actually how do we bring the science, the knowledge when it comes to greening of cities? How do we bring in, for example, from C4ICRAF, our knowledge with tree species, tree diversity? How do we make sure that the greening of cities also take into account interconnectivity that can allow for dispersal of wildlife in the cities, can allow for a big part of my passion is, of course, also the fact that how can we design cities that are also child-friendly? Most of our cities have not incorporated green spaces and recreational spaces for children. So children are struggling, they're playing on roads which are not safe and so on. So I think investment in especially transport and mobility infrastructure in cities is very central. How do you make sure you promote more non-motorized transport, electric vehicles and so on? The second thing I wanted to say for me from a science perspective, and I think from the work that we do is also in a very shifting and fluid geopolitical environment, we know that international relations has been governed by relations between member states, both bilateral but within multilateral setting. I think from the science side, science diplomacy provides a new avenue for us to actually support city collaboration when I heard about the MOU that is being discussed, because I think we can actually achieve a lot by having also cities collaborating. And that's a new form of science diplomacy that can actually drive climate action, particularly also linking, different cities with capacities, different cities with making sure that, the technology diffusion, both from, north-south, south-south, north-south, and so on, happens. And I think we need to open that window because, of course, I'm sure that the geopolitical climate is changed almost in a very fundamental way. And I think scientists now have a new place to go beyond science, to go beyond publishing papers in journals, to link science to faith as we're doing here, but also to link science to diplomacy and to make sure that we actually provide the knowledge that we generate and help cities develop action plans, help them cooperate, and help them achieve the desired goals that we are looking for.
Thank you very much, Philip. I have to commend this panel for being so succinct that we have 10 minutes left for questions. So, okay, I already have a first question here. So please.
Thank you very much. This is really an excellent discussion. I just want to refer to the comments made by our dear friend, the Governor Tichilo. I understand that the mayors and governors in Africa meet on a regular basis. They have formed a forum, which has been quite effective in exchanging good practices and in also making statements to the African governments. And as far as I know, the last one was actually hosted by you here in Nairobi. I think it's March this year. And a statement was issued. If I am right, please correct me if I am not, that calls on all the ministers of finance, not the presidents, but the ministers of finance in Africa, to make sure that the resilience, climate change resilience, is adequately funded. So my question is, how useful do you think such a forum is making? It has been going on for a number of years. And whether such a call to the ministers of finance can have some impact. Thank you.
Thank you for that very important observation and question. Yes, we had the Africa Climate Summit here in Kenya last year in September. It was attended by all heads of government and presidents. And as I said earlier, a number of resolutions were made. And key among those resolutions was financing. And financing was taken as a key area of concern, given the global environment, how it's so working. So resolutions were made to ensure that, the ministers of finance and the environment be able to sit together and come up with a long-term financing strategy on how to finance climate initiatives. At the same time, be able to work out good terms of engagement in accessing to multi and bilateral financing, which again, if you check, you find the conditions are quite stringent. Quite a number of those multilateral and bilateral funding, they have taken the angle of loaning, giving money as a loan in terms of dealing with the climate initiatives. So that is a team that is supposed to work on that and come up with an African strategy on how to handle that. Because what has come out clear is that when we engage as a country, individual countries, we don't have the strength. And so we find that some countries have entered into bilateral and multilateral agreements on climate initiatives, but they are very costly, very, very costly. And one area that was discussed, and I think I would like this summit to address this issue, is a very urgent issue, is the issue of climate credit and climate markets. The issue of climate markets is becoming a very, very emotive issue, because quite a number of investors from Europe and from wherever, they are coming in Africa, and in the guise of climate markets or credit, are having people sign agreements, communities sign agreements, which are making the communities have their land committed to climate markets and credits for the next 30 years. But when you check the outcome, what they would get is nothing, and you find that their livelihoods actually is compromised. So those of you who come from Kenya, you have heard the problems we have had with the northern rangelands, and recently you heard in Uasin Gishu, where people's lands were signed off, and for 30 years they realized they could not use their land except for growing trees. So it's an issue that needs a global or continental effort.
Thank you, Governor. While I look for the next question, just to add to that, at C4Craft, one of the things we see that's really important is you get what you negotiate. And part of our work is how do we work with communities to make sure that in their negotiations, they're getting the highest returns in terms of community benefits, biodiversity benefits, and carbon benefits. And that way we can be addressing climate, we can be addressing food security and livelihoods, as well as ensuring that we're preserving as much natural capital as possible. And I know we have our country coordinator in Kenya here, so we'll see how we can continue the efforts, particularly in Kenya. to get those returns benefiting local citizens. Okay, so question here.
Thank you, Elian. That question for Widi and Lillian. Obviously, we see you as African fellows working on climate change, but I have to ask the question as you're coming from the Western world. And the question is the following for Widi, particularly that the United States is not anymore engaged on the Paris Accords, agreements, etc. And I can see from the bottom-up approach in the United States that the state of California is doing big efforts on decarbonization and climate adaptation. What's the good news? What do you bring us? Because we see the polluters to be able to pay for the pollution. We see the Western world to be doing efforts on mitigation. And with this micmac in terms of being part of the global momentum and not part of the global momentum is really, slowing down the process of achieving the targets of Paris Agreement. So what do you bring us in good news, apart from the macro statement on climate change negotiation as we're going to Pelham? What comes from the deep-rooted politicians and decision makers of the United States in responding to climate change, particularly for the sake of the African vulnerable communities? And the same for Lily, which is a different perspective. I've been in Ireland, which we did all the scoping of IPCC, a big commitment from your country. But what's the good news? We really want to have a good vibes that we can take forward for the climate responses. Over.
Sorry, a couple of good news I can bring is in 2016, when the US government pulled out of the Paris Accord, the first thing California and some other US states did was we need to jump on building collaboration among ourselves. And then California led that conversation and made alliances with almost 65% of the economy within the US states. And then it also made alliances globally as subnationals that when we have challenges at the federal level, then we need to strengthen our subnational engagement. Well, we're doing the same again now. At COP29, we discussed that, and I met Governor Orticello there, and we discussed the same issues. California said, we will double down in our engagement. And since then, our actions around memorandum of understanding and engagements have actually been elevated. So I think we can do it without the federal government. Of course, it would be better because it is the largest economy, and California and China made an agreement. Governor Newsom signed an agreement 6 months ago. The second largest economy in the world, China, and the fourth largest economy, California, signed an agreement to actually address climate change. So those kinds of engagements are critical. The second part of it is, while not applicable everywhere, and it should be relevant to the local levels, what we have learned in California is actually climate policies are good economic policies. We have consistently seen over the last few decades, and especially the last few years, as we invest more on resiliency and adaptation infrastructure, innovation is built up. Today we're seeing for every fossil fuel economy job, we're getting 6 times as many jobs in clean energy. So that translates in good job creation and economic policies. We've also seen the California GDP significantly growing, just surpassing Japan to be the 4th largest economy, not in spite of, but because of a lot of our investments, and significant amount of that investments literally coming from California, with a large percentage of the innovation coming from immigrant communities within California, to your point. So those are, I think, the couple of good news that I can bring from California.
Okay, that's a great question. And to follow on Samuel's, one of the best thing about Ireland is we have the most strongest movement when it comes to climate action, the most strongest movement. Although the North of Ireland is part of the United Kingdom, we are also a part that has many benefits when it comes to enjoying both sides. And what I mean is, you have heard of Brexit, where the United Kingdom left the European Union. That doesn't affect us when it comes to climate action, because we are still governed by the European Union climate justice actions. So we can enjoy both. The other point I want to make is we are aligned with the 2030 goals of net zero. We are aligned with all the climate action policies that are being pushed by the European Union. And I'll talk about when it comes to peace building. Now, Northern Ireland is a place where we're still pushing on our peace building. Many of our funding comes from the European Union. No one in our city and region, or in the whole entire region of Northern Ireland, will be funded if they don't have a strong climate action statement. Everything you do is aligned with climate action statements. And that is something that is robust. And it's the best news that any group can have. We recognize right now that for prosperity within our region to happen, for job creation, we have to align ourselves with the renewable energies. That's why any new buildings that are going up will not be given permission, and I sit in the planning committee, will not get permission to build if they haven't produced their own strategy on how they are mitigating on climate justice. So there's really good work that is happening in a very small place. And one statement that's made, and you mentioned that, you reference our greatest Wangari Maathai when she mentioned about the little actions that citizens take. Within our city and region, every Friday, every single Friday, schools still walk out fighting for climate action. And because our young people from the primary level to the university level are speaking about climate justice, they're speaking about safeguarding the planet for their future, it is an agenda that we have on our single committees in all our councils across the region. So there's a good movement within our city and region, and I would really welcome you to visit our website, the Derry City and Strabane District Council, because you'll be able to see even the statements, and in real action we implement those. And so those small acts that citizens are doing, from legislators to citizens, because it is a united front we have to put on this particular issue. So Ireland, it can never be found wanting when it comes to fighting for the future of our young people in terms of climate.
Thank you, Lillian. And I can also attest to Ireland's contribution to the AU-EU Agricultural Summit in Rome, where there was a passionate representative talking about the experience of the potato blight and experience of hunger is something that is very strong in the ethos of the Irish, and that for them, how we work collectively on the planet so that no citizen goes hungry is a commitment, particularly as we're fighting climate change. So I want to thank our wonderful panel for their contributions. We are finishing just on time for a coffee break, so all of you can be nourished and come back to more nourishing of our souls, our minds, for continued action. So thank you very much. Have a great break and see you soon.